Magic in ancient Egypt. Magic pattern. How magic spells work. Language as treatment. Frankfurter 1995 examined the power of historiola. He names the characteristics of the historiola. They are stories whose telling time is the past, expressed through the corresponding verbal forms. You don't have to, but you could refer to a well-known story. The connection to the current incident could be due to an analogy inherent in the story, or through the explicit naming of the real circumstances. Many historioli contained dramatic mono or dialogues. The lack of incantation in some sayings makes it clear that the magical power can only be carried by the historiola. Like many authors before him, Frankfurter sees the task of historiola is to update the divine world events. He connects this with the performative aspect of the sayings. Frankfurter concludes that the performative transmission of power from the realm of myth to the human sphere takes place through the historiola and at the same time connects this transmission of power with the use of iconographic amulets and the use of quotations. The Holy Scriptures of the book Religions. Frankfurter attributes the assumed mode of operation of the historiola to the fact that they are performative statements in the sense of Austin. Through this speech act, the entire environment is transformed into a mythical situation. In the case of declarative sayings, the authority that accomplishes this transformation comes from the story that is being told. Fortunately, Frankfurter does not declare the inclusion of mythical events in comparisons that the healer makes in the non-narrative sections of magic spells to be complete historioli, but rather recognizes their formal equality with other relata drawn from the world of material experience. Altenler saw this differently, who assumed that the historioli were basically variants of such short mythical allusions developed into stories, which themselves often remained incomprehensible. In Frankfurter's view, the historiola depends on what is assumed to be generally known content and draws its performative power from it. In contrast to the conventional view, Frankfurter understands a myth to be the pre-articulative level of a culture, a condensation of social structure, morality, and existential concerns at the broadest level. His definition is therefore close to what Fludernik calls a fable. This definition of myth because it elegantly avoids the problems that Egyptology has with the fact that myths only appear as fully formulated stories late in Egyptian history. Because the recording and even the formulation of a myth in Egypt is not without purpose. Rather, its original location is actually the historiola of a magic spell. There it establishes the connection to the current ritual context. This connection occurs when the ritualist takes on a role from the story by identifying himself with a god. A similar effect is created by using literal speech. In addition, the historiola can serve to sanction the origin of the incantation that is subsequently carried out. The same applies to the origin of objects used in the ritual. The connection can also be made by providing information about the problem on a mythical level. In addition, the explicit mention of the patient's name can integrate current events into the historiola. Through the historiola, all analogies, according to Schneider, can be made. This primary purpose of the historiola is certainly not in doubt. It was already highlighted by Malinowski as an important component of magic spells. Nevertheless, it is striking that the technique of establishing the analogy between the current case and the world of gods with the help of a narrative is obviously a feature of reactive magic spells. So far, this fact has hardly been taken into account when considering the historiola, although it is interesting to ask about the reasons. As already indicated, this could be due to the personnel constellation, which shows strong differences between preventive and reactive sayings. In preventive spells, the actant and beneficiary usually coincide, while in reactive spells the beneficiary and actant are two different people. The actant must necessarily make the addressee aware of the beneficiary of the sayings, and his situation in some form in order to persuade them to intervene on his behalf. Of course, the current situation is interpreted mythologically, and the event, as explained above, is analogized overall to an event on a divine world level. Many historioli follow a scheme that compares well with the AIDA model developed by Elmo Lewis in 1898 as a strategy for sales discussions. If in the AIDA model you replace the customer with the helping gods invoked and the product with the healing of the sick, you can observe a similar approach in numerous historioli. 1. Interest, through an initial exclamation, a scream, an earthquake, etc. Attention is drawn to the accident in question. 2. Attention, the helping gods rush to help. Isis often takes on this role, but she is also found in the role of mediator, attracting the attention of another god or the entire 90. 3. Desire, the need to heal the accident victim and thus also the human patient is awakened. The reasons mentioned are varied, but they can almost all be brought to the common denominator that only by healing the emergency situation can the world be kept going. 4. Action, the helping recipient group acts by saying one or more incantations in favor of the accident victim. Of course, this similarity only exists structurally. The arc of tension in the historioli is aimed at healing the calamity. The action takes place within the framework of the story, which is usually not closed, but takes up the text pattern of preventive spells. In this way, mythical events on the one hand and real events on the other are completely merged. In this respect, the historiola serves to prepare a final incantation, in that, in addition to the legitimizing and analogizing power of the narrated myth itself, it also has a very tangible text structural meaning, as it binds the third person, the patient, so to speak the subject of the negotiation between the actant and the addressee, logically into the conversation between the speaker and the addressee.